Okay, I'd like to call to order the Metro North Committee meeting for March. We have no public speakers. I need a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
I get a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. The 2010 Metro North Work Plan, no changes as of now.
Correct.
Status of operations.
Good morning, everyone. Status of operation is outlined on page 11 in your agenda book. In February, we operated at our goal of 97.7%. The AM peak and reverse peak were below goal, and the PM peak and all of the off-peak were above goal. During February, we operated below 95% only 3 times, and 1 time below 90, which was the second day of the storm on February the 26th. 99.7% of our scheduled trips were completed, and 98.4% of our trains operated with a full consist. I'd like to note that we had 2 100% days in February, February 14th and February 21st, both on both Sundays. On the west of Hudson, we operated service at 93.3% in February, which was below our goal of 96.3%. The Port Jervis operated at 89.9% in February, below the goal of 95.2%. And the Pascack Valley operated at 95.4%, below goal of 97%. Both east and west of Hudson were doing very well prior to the February 25th, 26th storms. We were actually at 98.5% on the east of Hudson before the storm took place. The storm had a significant impact, especially on the Port Jervis line, which I'm sure you're aware. We suspended service over the course of that weekend. I have to tell you that our crews worked tirelessly over the weekend. On Saturday, I think we cleared close to 60 trees between Port Jervis and Sloatsburg. And on Sunday, we worked very closely with both the Orange and Rockland and Central Valley, who were a big, not Central Valley, Central Hudson utilities. Both were a big help to us to restore power to the line and get our signal systems back online. And of course, we did all that traipsing through 30-plus inches of snow. As bad as the storm was, east of Hudson, the Saturday, Sunday, and Monday following the storms, we ran 99, 99.4, 99.2 on those 3 days. And on west of Hudson, we were back to 96.9% on Monday after the weekend outage. So I was, all said and done, I was very proud of the work our crews did over the course of that weekend.
I want to add to that. You know, Orange County was really T-boned by that storm, and everything was out of operation. Not only did Metro North's crews and the New Jersey Transit crews that were on some of those trains behave wonderfully. I was especially proud of how well everyone got along. You know, the county government was supportive, the 2 utilities were supportive, Salisbury Mills firemen were supportive, and it was a very difficult thing. I've never remembered a situation where we couldn't have service for 2 days because there was no power and no way to get through the snow, but you guys just were spectacular. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a good coordinated effort. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to echo it too, what Bob is saying. I mean, with respect to both the Metro North crews who did an enormous job cleaning that line, getting it going, the coordination with the 2 utilities, which they stepped up to the plate and made priorities what our priorities were, and New Jersey Transit, who was basically with us throughout that weekend, coordinating what the plans were in a very positive way. So it was really, but again, I want to go back to the Metro North folks and Bob's folks who did a phenomenal job getting us in a place where we could run the trains on Monday.
Mm-hmm. And all the commuters thank you, too, because we weren't sure. Some of us couldn't get to the train, but if the train was there, it was good news.
All right, the MDBF, that information is outlined on page 16 of your agenda book. We're actually off to a very good start. January, we were at 133,979 against our goal of 110,000. So it's a good start for a winter month. So hopefully we will continue with that. That's it. Any questions?
Yeah, great start.
Thank you.
Any comments, questions? Kim?
Good morning. January's financial report begins on page 30, showing non-reimbursable accrued net deficit before cash conversion adjustments as being favorable to the budget by $9.2 million. These results give rise to cautious optimism as we begin 2010. Revenues at $44.5 million were $1.6 million or 4% higher. On that, East of Hudson ridership is slightly below 2009 levels by 1%, but was above budget by 2%. What we are seeing is commutation ridership is in line with the budget, while non-commutation ridership has generated positive results against the budget on all three lines. Expenses at $98.5 million were $7.6 million or 7% lower. Labor expenses were $2.5 million favorable, and non-labor expenses was $5.1 million favorable. Reflected in these results are two actions with Metro North started in January 1st of this year. These were financial management initiatives initiated to further reduce our budgeted spending. The first initiative I want to mention is the overtime initiative. We are pursuing to reduce unscheduled overtime through a less aggressive MOW response to weather events and storm coverage. We've also started a second initiative related to strategic procurements. This is to achieve reductions in materials and supply spendings through partnered joint procurements with Long Island Railroad and other agencies to capture efficiencies and economies of scale where possible. We are also pursuing joint partner business process reviews between the operating division and the procurement division on materials purchasing and maintenance inventory practices. These two initiatives have already generated positive results in the month of January. Additionally, we are also seeing positive results in the area of traction and propulsion power and fringe costs such as health and welfare and pension expenditures that are lower than budget due to lower rates. Metro North will plan to capture and reinvest these positive budget variances into any new and updated 2010 financial plan. And then finally, cash basis, Metro North drew $38.7 million less in subsidies in the month of January. Of this, $35.2 million was less from the MTA and $3.6 was less than CDOT. This is all as a result of cash receipts being higher by $7 million, cash disbursements being lower by $20 million, and then the use of existing cash balances. All other information has already been provided in your book. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Keep that subsidy down. That's great. Any questions, comments? Okay, monthly ridership.
Good morning. The January results are in your book, starting on page 43. I'll give you a few highlights. Continuing what has been a good trend the last few months, we're trending towards stability, and then in some areas actually returning to growth. The January ridership was down 1.3% versus January 2009. This is certainly a significant, we're starting to get an upswing from the 4% numbers we were seeing for a number of months last year. By line, the Harlem line and the Hudson line were both down slightly over 2%, while the New Haven line in the month of January actually grew compared to January 2009 by 0.1%. Commutation trends continue to improve. Overall commutation was down 3.8% in January of 10, and that compares to, we were seeing numbers in the -7 to -8 range several months ago. And non-com ridership grew by 2.8% in the month of January compared to the same month last year. So that's good. We've actually seen growth now in non-com. And we'll be watching this very closely to see if how these trends continue to move. To from Manhattan, ridership was pretty much flat. There was a slight decrease in intermediate ridership. By line segment, we actually, for now the second month in a row, saw some significant growth on the outer New Haven. Stamford East grew by 4% in January of 09, January 10 versus January 09. However, we're still continuing to see declines on other line segments, 1 to 2% on most of the other line segments, and actually slightly higher than that on the lower Hudson. West of Hudson, overall ridership west of Hudson was down 6.6% in January of 10, and that's largely driven by the Port Jervis line, which is of our five lines, The one that's the slowest now to rebound, ridership was down 8.9% in January, while the Pascack Valley did, like the East of Hudson lines, return to stability. Ridership on the Pascack Valley was only down 0.4% in January, and just a few months ago we were seeing drops of 5 to 6%. So this is also good news. Our connecting services, we're also starting to see some signs of a rebound. The January numbers for Hudson Rail Link were up almost 5%, so that's good. We're returning to positive trends there. Haverstraw-Ossining was down 6%, and the Newburgh Beacon Ferry in January was down 19.5%. And we've talked previously about, we think that the Newburgh Beacon in particular is taking a double hit because the mid-Hudson Valley on the Hudson line, the commutation ridership is down so much that they've been able to clear years' worth of a waiting list at Beacon. And I asked, Phil Patillo checked who's been getting those permits, and a substantial number of the new permits are issued to people who live in Newburgh. So we think that's, as I've said in previous months, we think that Newburgh Beacon's down because of the drop in commutation ridership, and then some of the people have are now able to park who previously took the ferry. So it's taking a double whammy from the fact that there are parking spaces available where there never haven't been for years.
Well, thanks
So,
for checking that.
yeah, so that's going on. So I'd say overall things are definitely moving pretty much across the board in the right direction.
Any questions or comments? Starting to look up.
Yeah.
All right. Tim?
Good morning. The capital update is on page 53 in your book. I'll give you some highlights, new highlights. For the coach program, we have 78 cars returned to service with 5 more either at Harmon or en route to Harmon that have been completed, have to be tested and will be put in service. There are only 2 more cars that have to leave the railroad to go to Canona, so that long project is hopefully starting to wind down a little bit. For the M8s, the 3rd pair finally arrived up at New Haven. Static testing is continuing. We should see the cars out on the railroad under their own power late April, early May. At Ossining, the Track 2-4 elevator was put into service. And at Tarrytown, the south overpass was taken out of service and removed. It was disassembled, and everybody is being handled by what was the north overpass, the existing overpass, and the new temporary overpass, which is further to the north. Can I take any questions?
Any questions for Tim? Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
MTA, please.
There's safety.
Oh.
Safety.
Skip safety.
It's okay, Wilbur. Police or safety? The MTA police system-wide numbers and region-wide numbers are on pages 61 and 62. Numbers are similar to those of last year. The month of February did have an increase in our robberies. We had 3 reported robberies, all basically random acts, different stations, no injuries reported in any of them, and thankfully all 3 of them resulted in arrests. That's all I have.
Any questions? Now we'll get to safety.
Good morning. I'll summarize the safety statistics that are in your books beginning on page 57. These are results for the month of January. In January, we had 6 employee injuries compared to 33 for January last year, which you will recall was one of our worst months in a long time. So, turn around there. The lost time and restricted duty injuries adjusted for work hours was down from 3.0 to 1.2, a 60% decrease. And the FYI reportable employee injuries adjusted for work hours was down from 3.7 per 200,000 hours to 1.2, a 68% decrease. The customer statistics begin on page 59. In January, we had 11 customer injuries compared to 16 in January of 2009. The customer injuries adjusted for ridership were down from 2.6 to 1.9 injury per million rides, a 27% decrease, and there were no FYI reportable customer injuries in January. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Good start.
Good start. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Okay, information items. Howard.
Okay, so we have actually 3 items in the book and then one that we passed out to you. The first is the annual 2009 Human Resources and EEO report. The second is the annual ridership report. So let me stop on those because those are both long reports and see, are there any questions on either of those 2 reports?
Well, I want to say that I was very happy to see that we're increasing our attainment of goals with respect to workforce diversity, and particularly with respect to the number of women, but we've still got a ways to go. I know the comparison was made to MTA as a whole, which is good, but we're hoping that that goal goes up as well. So let's keep working on it because we're almost getting there.
Okay. Wendy, did you want to add anything?
Well, we do realize that in spite of the fiscal considerations that we need to redouble our efforts in terms of relationships with trade organizations and diversity groups to create a pipeline for recruitment. We're also working on expanding our education of our supervisors and hiring managers so that there's increased reception for diversity and across titles within the constraints of collective bargaining agreements.
I'd also like to add that I'm seeing a greater diversity in our subcontracting, which is a positive thing.
Yes.
And hopefully the mentoring program that MTA is trying to get off the ground would be of benefit to Metro North, because we operate in an area with a lot of small businesses, and that's what that program is designed to help deal with us as a big agency. So I'm hoping that provides us with some good opportunities too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jim?
Thank you, Jim. On page 73, we're showing that training by subject, 156 employees were, I guess, exposed to sexual harassment training, and 158 to workplace respect and behavior. It struck me that should be those 2 programs should be more or less standard for all new employees, and you had like 304 new employees in the year. I was wondering whether, in fact, that was the practice and why it didn't seem to be reflected in these numbers.
Historically, that's not been the practice. Historically, sexual harassment prevention education has been a requirement for anyone who supervises other employees. And that's on a biennial rotation. So every other year, supervisors are brought back in for continuing education in that area. The respect in the workplace piece is rolled out for all employees. However, to do it when the new hires are brought into orientation has not proven to be practical, because there are some times when we only have 2 or 3 employees in the orientation program, and that'll be a mixture of agreement and non-agreement, or managerial and non-managerial employees. So within the first 3 months of hire, we're trying to capture those individuals. We do absolutely agree that we need to up our efforts and expand the numbers of employees captured within the first quarter of service. And that's our intention.
Yeah. Thank you. On the sexual harassment side, I have some sensitivity to this from prior experience in another job, but it has always struck me that training is important up and down the line, and especially in a male-dominated environment like this. And is there a reason why we don't want to expand that as possible in the ordinary batch of training that goes on in the organization?
I'd love to expand that. Absolutely, I agree with you. I think every employee needs to have regular education in this area. It is part of what we are re-engineering our education, and it will be part of all education for all employees. I was speaking to historically.
Yeah, I think, Jim, let me just add one thing. We are relooking at the whole way we're doing training throughout the whole training department. one of the challenges we will have is in this time of very limited resources, plus in a time of significant increase in requirements for federal training coming out of the Railway Labor Safety Act and a host of actions. We are very much, it's a very difficult challenge to train everybody and everything you want, given just the financial circumstance we have and given what we must do from a federal regulatory standpoint. So we are working on this, and Wendy's looking at it with Stephen Teal and Greg and Ray, but I don't think we're at a place yet where we can say we can accomplish everything we want given our financial circumstance. And so that's still a work in progress.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that part of the consideration is, at least I know it has been, that failure in this area can have significant financial consequences for the organization, and so it's you know, a trade-off.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, let me move on then to the ridership report. Are there any questions, or Bob, did you want to add anything? Any questions on that?
I noticed in reviewing the ridership report that it was really a restatement of what we've heard every month because of the detail we get in our ridership report every month. So it was really a restatement of a year's worth of reports.
Right. It is.
But it's nice
Along
to
with
have
some
it in
pretty,
place.
pretty pictures and pretty charts.
Yeah, right.
But it's also nice to see it all as one.
And
Nice to see it in one place.
and handy for efforts to spread the gospel as well, and explain to other people what's happening.
Okay. The third item is the April schedule change. Bob McClargy, you want to speak to that
Yeah.
for a minute?
We have some fairly minor schedule changes going in on the 15th. Excuse me, starting on page 115 in your book. Our Sunday, April 11th schedule changes are primarily for capital construction work this spring and summer. We have concrete tie replacement on the Upper Hudson. So there will be some changes as outlined on page 115 to a number of Upper Hudson trains, people having to move earlier and later for the most part. There's also some drainage work going on in the East Bronx that will affect the Harlem and New Haven lines, and those changes are outlined on page 116. Beyond the construction work, there are two minor changes being made to a couple of New Haven line trains at Connecticut DOT's request. One stop in the morning at East Norwalk for people actually getting off at East Norwalk to go to work. That's a good thing to encourage intermediate commuting. And the train out of and there's also a stop at South Norwalk on a train being added to a different train. There are no costs associated with any of the changes we're talking about for April 11th. And finally, there's one early, the first train in the morning going north up the Hudson line is moving a little bit earlier because we've gotten some requests from people working at the Ossining Correctional Facility that if we move the train 5 or 6 minutes, there's some people with early reports there that could take the train. So a number of them indicated that they think they would hope to start taking the train, so we're going to make that change, and hopefully that'll pick us up against some reverse commuters. And we're looking for every new rider we can get these days, as we all know. Any questions?
Okay. So then the last item is the one that was passed out today, the additional information item on our service reduction plan. And what that lays out is the modifications to, it lays out what the service reductions that Metro North will do as part of the overall MTA plan of service reductions that will be put in place in June. For Metro North, as you know, we'd identified a series of proposals. We had 2 public hearings. We heard very loudly and clearly the concerns about elimination of the Port Jervis line train. I will say that I also heard privately from both Carl and Susan about it as well, who pointed out what the issues are associated with it. Based on all the feedback, we are not going to make those 2 trains will continue to run. And we also we made some other changes from things we heard. We had a late-night Harlem line train that we were going to eliminate. It would have opened up a big service gap to the upper Harlem line in the middle of about 10:30 at night, which affects our discretionary ridership. So we decided to keep that and modify another more lightly used rush hour train. We also made modifications on the New Haven line as well to reflect some of the comments from the state of Connecticut. So this is the package that you have in front of you that ultimately going to the board later this week. I will point out that we will need formal approval from the state of Connecticut for the New Haven line changes.
I appreciate the fact that you did reevaluate the Port Jervis train service. Because losing 2 trains was disproportionate to the level of service that we have. And I also want to thank all the people who came to the hearings and spoke. It impacts Orange County, obviously, because the Port Jervis line is in Orange County, but it also impacts Carl's Rockland County ridership.
Okay, now we have an action item. Board Committee Charter Adoption and Amendments. Today we are being asked to approve amendments to our committee charter to reflect the changes in the committee structure which will take effect in April. Beginning with the April board cycle, Metro North and the Long Island Railroad Committee meetings will be combined. A joint and concurrent meeting of our board committees with Long Island will maximize the benefits of efficiencies that are taking place. It will allow oversight of East Side access to be done by the railroad board members and will allow commuter rail services to be viewed in more of a regional manner. It will also help us learn from each other in a more structured environment and will help us to implement best practices for the benefit of our customers. At the full board meeting, the board will approve the delegation of authority to the newly formed joint committee and will adopt the charter of these committees. I think it's an action item. We need a motion to accept. Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Carried. Now, in procurements, we have one procurement.
Right. Well, first we had, just on the joint procurement, Long Island Railroad will be seeking approval for 2 procurements where they're the lead agency that affects Metro North. One is a sole source OEM with Columbus Steel Castings for couplers and trucks on the M3 and coach cars, and the other is with a firm Luminator for interior lighting on the M3 and M7 cars. Metro North value is not to exceed $250,000, and then this is just another couple of contracts on a long list now, the joint contracts between the 2 railroads and sometimes with the other agencies. In addition, we are requesting approval of one procurement totaling not to exceed $11,111,684. This is a competitive public works procurement for the delivery of signal equipment to do the engineering, design, fabrication, and delivery of 33 pre-wired signal houses and 18 equipment racks for grade crossing protectors on the Danbury branch. And this equipment will be installed by Metro North Forces, and this is one of the major elements of the project to put cab signaling on the Danbury branch, which is fully funded by the state of Connecticut. It has been a long-standing priority. We're anxious to get that done. I will add that this equipment is also compatible with PTC in the future. So that is the one procurement we're asking your approval of.
Got to move. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, April the 26th at 8:30 a.m. It should be noted that it is an expansion of time. This committee meeting will run from 8:30 until 10 due to the joint committee meeting that we will have and begin. So I look for a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Any opposed? Carried.